Welcome to the podcast, Sister Lives, a red flag rewatch. This is a podcast for disenchanted fans of Sister Wives, fans who fell in love with the Brown family, watched their precious kids grow up, and became enchanted with all the love, only to be told it was all a lie. Nothing was as it seemed. We were bamboozled, fooled, duped, tricked, conned, swindled, hoodwinked. What did we miss? Where did it go wrong? Come help me find out as we watch from the beginning. Hey, welcome back. Today we're going to discuss Kody Brown on Special Forces. He was on a show last week, but he never said anything. He wasn't really shown that much. He did get knocked down to the ground. I took a picture of that. That was pretty cool, but you didn't see him say anything or do anything. So I didn't really do a show last week, but this week, episode 3, he did do a good bits. So on day 2, where he didn't do much, we'll go over that day real quick. It says 0600, the drill sergeant gets out there and he says, "Get on parade." And Kody Brown walks out there and says, "Did I hear something?" And they're getting up and they're getting breakfast. And they go to their first challenge, and it's a huge dam. And they have to walk up the steps to get to the top of the dam. And the dam is 255 feet tall. So that's a lot of dam steps. Oh, I cracked myself up. And what they have to do is they're going to go 2 at a time, and they're going to get inside the frame of an airplane, and they're going to slowly put it underwater, which sounds horrifying, but they're strapped into this framed airplane, and they have to stay underwater for 20 seconds. And then somebody's going to tap them and tell them they can leave. And then they have to leave out of the airplane from a certain door. And in the water, there's like 6, they called them underwater paramedics. So they've got like people all around ready to help you in case something goes wrong. It only really showed one picture of Kody, and he did fine. The picture was kind of funny, though, with him holding his breath and his eyes wide open. What was interesting, Jussie Smollett and Eva were in a plane together, and Eva is starting to panic even before the plane gets in the water. You can tell she's panicking. This is really scary for her. And she actually does it, and she goes out the right door, and then she gets her head above water, and I think she even said, "I did it. I did it." And then I think either she's not a very good swimmer or she hyperventilated, because suddenly she starts to sink. So the people pull her into the boat. It was kind of scary, but you could tell she kind of let her panic get the best of her. And then Shawn East and her husband, they're a husband and wife team that's on the show, and they go in together. And it was so sweet. The husband said to his wife, "This water's cold. Don't let it take your breath away, but you still take my breath away." That's so sweet. But they pass. So it gets down to the last person, and it looks like she's going to have to go in by herself. But Jussie says, "I'll go again. I messed up the first time." And because he went out the wrong door the first time, he actually failed. So because they were a team, they both failed. So even though Eva almost died, but she did it, she still failed because Jussie went out the wrong door. And there's only 2 doors. Only 2 doors on one side of the plane. 2 doors. There's one right beside him where he was sitting, and the one right next to it. And they said, "You come out this second door." He could not understand that for some reason. I don't know if it's just the way he was sitting. It didn't quite register with him, because he goes down again with this girl, and they fell again because he goes out the back. He didn't go out the right door. Wouldn't you think, like the first time I failed and I said, "Well, I'm going to do it again. Show me which door," and I would have been right there. "Which door? Show me which door." Did he just not make sure which door? I don't understand. And Kody, when he went underwater, he actually did okay, but his partner panicked and left before the 20 seconds was up, and they failed. So the next challenge, they're going to do a boxing match, and they've got headgear and they've got boxing gloves, and they're supposed to just pummel each other for a certain amount of time. And the gymnast, Shawn, gets punched in the nose, and she takes it well, and she goes, "I got to make sure it's not broken. Hold on a minute." And she's just like, "Yeah, it's not broken." And Eva is still panicking. She's like, "I can't do this. I can't do this. I need to speak to a psychologist or something." And so they let her not do it. And Teresa quits altogether. She pulls her number off. She says, I can't see my daughter fight. And then she's preparing to go into this dramatic monologue, and the drill sergeant's like, nope, nope, you're quitting, get out, no more words. And she's like, I just can't see you. Ah. So she didn't get to have her moment of quitting, but Kody does get punched a couple times and he ends up on the ground. Kody was a wrestler. Punching is probably just not his style. He probably just could not get in his head the right way to fight somebody. It probably was really hard for him. Ravi, I had to look him up. He looks so familiar, but he's been in a lot of good stuff. He's funny, but he's actually a pretty tough guy. I saw like a little snippet of a podcast he was on with Brianna Chicken Fry. He said that he found somebody in the village and took a 45-minute boxing class so he would have some idea as to what to do. That's smart. That's just thinking outside the box. But he had crazy eyes when he was boxing. So anyway, I thought I'd throw that in there. I thought that was interesting. So all we saw of Kody was him walking out, and when the drill sergeant said, get on parade, he said, did I hear something? And then we saw him holding his breath underwater, and then we saw him getting punched to the ground. So that was all for episode 2. And then it goes on to episode 3. They're up at breakfast, and they're eating hard-boiled eggs and fruit. I wonder if that's on Kody's diet. Maybe. Episode 3 starts out with a casualty evacuation task. They have to go in teams of 3 with a stretcher and identify casualties. They would have American flag emblems somewhere on them, and they got to get them out. They're waiting to go in, and it shows Kody with Brianna Chicken Fry, and he's asking her how she spells her name. I guess he's wondering if it's spelled like his daughter's name, Brianna. He says, what's your gig? Like, why are you on here? And she goes, I'm a podcaster. And he says, that's all? That's your qualifications? And then he laughs because I think he realizes, oh, I'm being a jerk. And so, but Brianna is not impressed. She should have said, what do you do? At least she works. And I've listened to 3 or 4 podcasters about this show, and everybody was like, oh my God, you know. Because being a podcaster is a lot of work. It's more work than Kody ever did. So anyway, I thought that was funny. So they're going through, and it's him and Brianna, and then it's this Olympic soccer player. They're all going in. He is just taking over. And you could tell right away that he is going to be a problem because he is in front and they're in the back, and he is hauling. And they're trying to keep up. They're not walking on flat, plain ground. They're walking in this rubble and like big, big chunks of rocks. They're having to step over, and they're tripping and they're falling. And Kody's just barreling past. Well, they can't see the ground to see what they're stepping on. He can. He is literally pulling the stretcher out of their hands. And they keep telling him, stop, stop. But he's like, no, we got to go, ladies. Why is he saying ladies? That's a little bit derogatory in this situation. So they keep telling him to stop, and they finally stop, and he says, ladies, bend over, both of you, pick him up right now. I don't know what I would have done in this situation, but I know they had to keep going because the drill sergeant was there yelling, go, go, go. And I don't know what I would have done if Kody looked over and said, bend over, both of you, right now. Pick him up. Ladies, we cannot stop. We must go on. And then, it's very important, they get the casualty onto the stretcher. And this poor casualty, he should have had a helmet on or something, because this guy gets dropped multiple times. Over and over and over, not just by them, but by every single person that goes through there. They drop him on the ground. It's just like this canvas stretcher. There is no protection. He gets dropped multiple times, at least 10 times on video. He gets dropped. At one point, another explosion goes off while they're carrying the first casualty. And if you look over to your right, there's a guy leaning up against the wall. You can't see his American flag right away because it's pointed away from him. And Brianna says, we got a casualty here. Kody will not stop. He just says, keep moving, keep moving. He says, we gotta go, we gotta go. And he starts pulling again. And Brianna's like, oh my God. And Brianna says, stop pulling. And they drop the casualty again. Then it goes over into a talking head. And Brianna says that in her personal life, she got steamrolled a lot. And I read up a little bit about her. I don't know the whole situation, but she did have it pretty tough. She's getting steamrolled here. And Kody is just not letting them stop. she yelled at him to stop. And she even says, "Oh my God, stop." They get out, and the drill sergeant says, "Line up." And Brianna's standing there straight and tall, and Kody grabs her arm and pulls her up next to him so they're in a straight line. I feel like, "Don't touch me, dude." But he's just grabbing and pushing on them forward. They informed them that that guy that they left behind was, in fact, an American soldier, and they did not check, and they left him behind. And drill sergeant looks at Kody and tells him he's going to have to tell his wife that you left him. Let that sink in. That bloke is dying that you left behind. And so they all say, "Yes, Sergeant." They step off to the side. Brianna says, "That was crazy. I don't know if all the training in the world would prepare for something like that. It was awful." And Kody says, "It went to beep." He's basically saying it went to crap, even though it was all his fault. All his fault. Brianna had told him to stop. They might have passed if he would have just stopped, but he didn't. Everybody's gone through, and it turns out every single team failed for one reason or another. One team left their backpacks behind because they couldn't do the backpacks, and the stretchers were getting in the way, and they decided that maybe the stretcher was more important, so they left the backpack behind. You shouldn't have left the backpack behind because there might be some military stuff in there that now the enemy has possession of, so that's not a good idea. So they failed. They're riding back to camp in the car, and Brianna says that her ex was a famous musician. Kody says, "Gossip Girl, tell us who it was. Who was the famous person?" And she says, "Zach Bryan." And she said, "He got famous on TikTok and thinks he's God." Kody says, "Oh, okay." So he was like, "Tell us who it was. Who was the famous person?" Because he loves famous people. They get back to camp, and Jesse is wheezing. He's sweating. He's coughing. He's not really able to get a good breath in. Like, he is just coughing and wheezing, and it is not going away. So he ends up going to medical, and they say his lungs sound like crap. So he ends up getting withdrawn. And it may have just been just me, but it looks like he was a little happy about it. I thought I saw a smile on his face, which if I was medically withdrawn, I'd probably be a little happy about it too, because it's like, I didn't quit. They pulled me. All right, so next task, they have to walk from one building's roof to another building's roof on a ladder that's set up on both of the roofs. They have to walk across like a tightrope. The first team that goes is Kody, and they tell him, "You have to be quiet. We have to get through this building really quiet, get to the roof, and get across." He's like, "Come on, ladies." And they're like, "Shh, shh." They just said be quiet. Anyway, so they get up to the ladder, and Kody Brown is the first across. They're attached to bungee cords and all that stuff, so if they fall, they're not going to hurt themselves. They've even got helmets on. But it is precarious. It's a long ladder. The ladder is not very steady. It droops in the middle a little bit. It does look pretty scary, and they're 40 feet up off the ground. So it is a lot. The drill sergeant looks at Kody and says, "Imagine it's one of your wives over here." And Kody kind of smirks a little, like, "I might not want to come over there." And then it goes to talking to Ted, and Kody says, "I had 4 wives for a long time. I got 1 now. I want to impress her every day." Of course, Kody gets cross. He does fine. And the drill sergeant said, "Good job on that pass." I would have liked to seen him fall. But his team ends up failing because the soccer player, she falls through one of the rings and falls completely off. She's hanging there by the bungee cord, and she's fine. She was going across a little bit too fast. I think she was trying to get it over with. One of the funny things about this is Nick Young, the NBA star, he's going across. He is a big dude going across this wobbly little ladder that droops in the middle, and it's just not very stable. He is not smiling anymore. He's usually a very smiley guy, but he is not smiling here. And he says, "I don't want to play this game no more." And he tells everybody that something's wrong with y'all. And so he gets almost more than halfway across, and he just freezes. He's just scared. And he says, I gotta lean. But if you lean down and you touch the ladder with your hands, you failed. So he ended up failing. I wish he had just been able to make it a few more feet, but he didn't. But that's all that happened on that. I was thinking the other day that this could be a good opportunity for Kody to go ahead and shave his head. They could make it a point on the show that one of the drill sergeants can shave his head as a badge of honor, just so he can say, "Well, they did this to me. I didn't do this to me," because he's so proud of that hair. I wish there was some way they could work in a plot point that they say, well, we're shaving that hair off. Have his hair shaved and be a normal person and not be messing with those two little locks of hair and his skin headband all the time. Give him a reason to shave it off, because now I think he's just keeping it out of spite. That would have been a good way to do it, but I don't think he's ever going to shave that head. Ever, ever, ever. And you're over there in Africa. Why don't you go up to Turkey and get them hair plugs that everybody's giving? Anyway, so that's it for that. So that was episode 2 and 3 of Special Forces. All right, see you next time. That's it for today. If you like my podcast, please like, comment, and subscribe. And if you want to reach me, you can always reach me at redflagrewatch@gmail.com. Thank you for joining me today. See you next time.